Hey, everybody, welcome to our first episode of Ikigai Leadership, my new podcast. Thank you guys for joining us so much. Joining me at least in this situation. Um, my name is Dr. Dhru Bee and go by Dr. Dhru Bee. Makes it a little easier on everybody. This podcast is going to be a pretty fun endeavor, I think, at least for me. Hopefully, it's fun for you as well. uh, our first episode to kick this off, we're talking about a lot of leadership development concepts, business, marketing, branding, all these different things. Within leadership development, within coaching, there's going to be the concepts of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I know a lot of folks hear those words and immediately have a cringe reaction, a visceral reaction to those words. A big reason for that is because most companies, and I will say most as in like 95% of companies out there, 95% of people out there in those companies are implementing DEI wrong. They're doing DEI wrong. How do you do DEI wrong? You do DEI wrong by focusing on optics and having optics be your primary thing that you focus on and that you promote. Um, I can't tell you the number of times I have companies, folks reaching out to me because of the work I do, asking me to do DEI work for them. I'll give you an example of how that sounds. Ring, ring, just the phone, obviously. The phones don't actually ring like that anymore. Anyway, phone rings. I answer the phone. Hey, we saw that you do some DEI work, and we wanted to do some for our organization. We have some culture concerns. We want to really address those, and we want you to do the work for us. Can you put together a proposal of what you want to do? Let's say we talk for another 20, 30 minutes about what the actual needs are there, and then I ask them what they have in mind. The inevitable answer that I get most times, unfortunately, yeah, that's too much in terms of what we want to do. We don't really want to do a whole training or any kind of coaching or anything like that, anything significant. We really just want to do a couple brown bags. If you do maybe like a series of 2 or 3 brown bags, no, I cannot. If your budget and if your intention is only to do 2 or 3 brown bags, I would take that money and instead of doing DEI work, just throw a pizza party. It's going to have this exact same effect, if not more, frankly, than me coming and talking at people about DEI. Brown bags do not work unless there's already interest, a deep interest of some sort in the content topic area or whatever you're talking about. Now, do people have that interest? Some, yes, absolutely. But again, because of the way things are happening and the way things have unfolded since 2020, and honestly before that, but 2020 was really with the George Floyd murder and everything like that happened that whole summer, all the riots, all the everything that happened. That was really what kind of awakened a lot of people to the need for doing DEI work. And it is still a need. It is a real thing. It is still a need. And there are a lot of folks out there who don't believe it because of the way that it's been marketed, the way that people focus on it, and the way that people have chosen to implement it. That is incorrect. And that is really annoying because it kills a thing that actually is needed very badly in the community for many, many reasons. No, we don't have time to go into all of them here, but that's one of the realities is that because these companies have changed their focus to be, let's spend money on this just to say we're spending money on it. It's virtue signaling on a company level. And you see it happening all over the place with all the pride stuff, right? I mean, there's all these memes about companies turning gay in Pride Month, because that's really what happens, right? They act like they've been with them all the time, but then the rest of the year they completely ignore these groups, right? Whether it's Asian Heritage Month, whether it's Black History Month, it's Pride Month, Women's Awareness Month. It's these groups are invisible to these companies all year round, except for that month, because they want to get the publicity and the clout from saying, "Oh my God, look at all this money we're investing, look at all this energy we're investing into these wonderful groups that need to be supported." And yes, they do need to be supported, but they need to be supported consistently. When you turn DEI into a checkbox and you turn culture consulting into a checkbox, you're minimizing and taking away all the value that those concepts, that those approaches bring to the table. And in the process of doing that, you're also minimizing everyone else, everyone in those groups, right? And you're taking away their value, and you're insulting their intelligence as well, by the way, which is, I think, it's probably one of the bigger deals, because let's take away DEI consulting, all that additional stuff there, right? Let's imagine that doesn't exist. Let's imagine nothing, no solutions exist for this kind of problem. If people just had a basic level of respect for other people and other groups that are not their own, there wouldn't be a need for DEI consulting. And that brings me to my topic today. After 5 minutes of talking about this, it's not just DEI as a whole. It's actually, like I said, this is a Cinema Coach episode. And so we're talking about American Boy Chinese. It is a series that just came out a little while back, and it is really good, actually. I was skeptical because of the fantastical nature of part of it, because that tends to it's an interesting balance you have to strike when you have a let's call it mythological world, and then you're taking that mythological world and combining it with the real world that we live in on a day-to-day basis. It's very rare that a movie or TV show or someone like that can actually make that work properly, because like I said, it's a very delicate balance. Sometimes, especially Disney, they tend to go a little too far in the fantastical side of things, right? And a couple episodes kind of go in that direction, and it's a little bit kind of a, you know, a deviation from what you feel like. But I would say the first episode hits you and hits you hard, because again, I wasn't skeptical per se, but I was like, okay, I was cautious. I want to approach this and see what it's like, and see if I'm going to like it, because maybe I won't like it. There are some things where they are too heavy-handed with it, and it's too much. It's not realistic, right? It's so blatantly obvious and so like in your face that it's like, okay, yeah, this is an exaggeration of what people actually experience. But no, this show actually tackles it very, very well, very accurately, very realistically. The main character, Jin, the actor, Ben Wang, I think it's Ben Wang, which is the character's name is Jin Wang. So um, honestly, it was really well done. The character was played perfectly. I think actually, so I'm looking at IMDb. Um, it says Wang, but I want to say his name is Wong in the show, because I feel like the dad corrected the teacher, the principal about that in the show. Anyway, that all being said, it's a great show. I mean, Ben Wang plays that character so well. Um, you feel for this kid. You're watching him exist in this world, and it's not, again, it's not, it's they did a really good job of stepping out of the typical portrayal of an Asian kid growing up in this world. He's actually not just a nerd, right? He plays soccer and he's pretty good. He's also trying to get away from the nerd world. Like they talk about the first episode, he talks about his parents ask him about his friend Anuj, who's an Indian kid. Shocker, the Indian kid and the Asian kid hang out, right? The Chinese kid and the Indian kid. Shocker, that happens. Because it happens in real life. But his parents ask him, "Oh, how's Anuj doing? How's he doing?" And he's like, "Oh, well, we haven't really talked since summer," and he doesn't really kind of go into detail about that. And then you see on the first day of school, he's coming back, and Anuj is there and just walks off, kind of, brushes him off. And my initial reaction to that actually was, oh, great, they're making another Indian kid look like a douchebag, because that's kind of what's been happening in the last few years. They've shifted from making, other bullies be, white or black or whatever, and now the bullies are all Indian somehow, because somehow at some point Indians became cool. I missed that memo. That still hasn't happened in the mainstream, so I think everyone missed that memo except for Hollywood. Just FYI, might want to circulate that one. um, but because I don't think that anyone else got that memo. um, but yeah, Indian kids are apparently doing the bullying now. But that's where I thought this was going. And side note, there are going to be spoilers here. I forgot to mention. The spoiler-free version is a great show, which I've given you already. But now we're getting into spoilers. Sort of. It turns out that the people that the new kids that Jin's hanging out with, the soccer kids who he wants to be friends with and wants to be cool with, the cooler kids, I should say. One of the kids really, they didn't go into detail of what happened, but he made fun of Anuj and really, teased him over the summer. And Jin didn't defend him, because Jin wanted to be friends with these guys. And so Anuj took that personally, understandably so. His best friend of however many years is not defending him, not standing up for him, and kind of like toss him to the side. So That I thought was a really cool nuance to the character, not just to Jin, but to that relationship and to the entire show. Because again, it's not like it's not in your face. It's not like a whatever, like pounding you in your face. Like this is discrimination over and over again, right? It's subtle. Every single experience of discrimination in the show, almost every single experience, is subtle. It's one of those things where it could be explained away, right? It could be like, oh well, maybe that's discrimination, maybe it's not. Is it a hate crime? Is it not? Like it's it doesn't rise to the level of that. Maybe we're not sure, and that's how it happens in real life. It's always this ambiguous situation. It's like, well, it could have gone either way. Is it because he's Asian, or is it because he's not? Is it because he's a nerd or whatever? But he's not a nerd in the show. He's nervous. He's kind of insecure sometimes and doesn't really know how to talk to girls and all that the typical tropes. But he's not a traditional nerd because he actually makes it onto the soccer team, which is pretty cool, right? As a Chinese kid, that's a big deal. As an Asian kid who's smart and who knows what he's doing and excels in school, they don't really talk about that too much, but you're assuming he does because he's Asian. Again, stereotypes, right? But the way he acts, right, and the way his interactions with his mom, the mom and dad, Chin Han plays his dad, and I don't know who Yan Yan Yo is, but she is amazing as his mom. And Chin Han, I have not seen Chin Han in this kind of role before. You've seen him in The Dark Knight. He played the kind of the evil mastermind behind the scenes kind of guy. You've seen him in Mortal Kombat playing Shang Tsung. But he plays the dad character so well. I mean, I'm sitting here. I'm not a father, obviously, yet, but I'm empathizing with this father character because he's trying to keep his head down and do his work, and that's frankly what my dad told me to do. And I could see my dad in this guy because he's not fighting for promotions. He's not speaking up at work. He's not trying to build relationships with people at work. He's like, just keep my head down. My work will speak for itself. And that is such an Asian Indian concept, right? That's something we've been taught our entire lives. Just keep your head down, do your work. Your work will speak for itself. And then now you have social media and you have marketing and you have all these things that are almost bad words in our culture, right? This idea of promoting yourself, talking about yourself in a positive light, right? Self-deprecating humor. I feel like I feel like we created self-deprecating humor. We being like the Asians, South Asians, because of our need for some kind of, deflection when someone gives us a compliment, because we don't know how to take those. We're not brought up getting compliments. Our parents saying we're proud of you, unheard of, right? It's a huge deal. I remember my dad told my brother he was proud of him one time, and my brother started tearing up because he'd never heard that before in his entire life. And that was like 2 years ago. My brother's like 47 at this point, 46. Yeah, that's how things go. I'm still waiting to hear from that, by the way, from my dad. I haven't gotten that yet. But I digress. Those characters are played so well, and the acting is actually on point. For a Disney Plus show, my standards are pretty low for Disney Plus shows, to be honest with you. Mandalorian was good, season 1. Season 2 was, Boba Fett, the acting was good across the board, I would say, but the show writing and whatnot, it was questionable at best. Miss Marvel, let's not even go there. I can do a whole nother episode about that show because that really frustrated me. But this show was actually, I think they knocked it out of the park in terms of acting and casting and writing. Daniel Wu plays the Monkey King really, really well. The makeup, I will say, didn't love the makeup. That's one thing I think that they could have done a better job with the makeup, with the characters, specifically around the mythical realm, the Monkey King realm and stuff like that. They could have done a much better job with the makeup. But that's a small issue in the whole thing as a whole, because the issues it tackles, the way it tackles them, the acting is great, the writing is great, the characters are believable. Again, I don't know if you guys, other folks have seen other portrayals of the Monkey King, and the way that he is as a character. But this is a much different Monkey King that I've seen in other series, other seasons, and other movies. This Monkey King was a father, right? He is a father, and his son also, played by Jimmy Liu. Don't know who he is. I haven't seen him before. He plays a character very well as well, because he plays a Chinese character, Chinese boy in an American school, and his interactions with other students and everything. It's very realistic. It's very much like, how would a foreign exchange student coming into an American school act and be treated? And the first episode, when there's a scene where the principal comes in and is like, "Oh, Jin, I want to introduce you to our new foreign exchange student, and he's gonna be shadowing you because you're both Chinese." And Jin's like, "I don't really speak Chinese." Like, okay, and she never asked him if he speaks Chinese. She never. It was just an assumption. And again, it was knocked out of the park the way that those three people, and the principal, whoever played the principal, I don't know her name. I'm looking for it right now. I can't see it, but on IMDb. But she played that character really well too, because that is how it comes across, right? They and it's well intentioned. We understand that, but the question becomes intention versus impact, right? And that's a whole nother debate we can get into. But intentions have to matter. I'm never going to say, I'm not one of those bandwagon folks who say intentions don't matter at all, because impact is extremely, extremely important. I will say it's a scale, it's a nuance, right? Intentions matter as long as you're making an effort to get better, to improve. If you just rely on your intentions being good and never try to get better, never try to improve, never try to learn more about other cultures, about how to do things better, about doing things differently, then your intentions don't no longer matter. But if you're still trying to get better and better and better, and you make a mistake and your intentions to continue to learn, well, then that's when it does matter. But it never negates impact. It can offset, but it never negates it, right? Impact is always going to be a consideration. And the way Jin feels in that scene, I mean, a lot of students, growing up, a lot of minority students can kind of empathize with Jin's feelings in that moment. It's like, why me? Why am I being singled out? And now even more attention is being drawn to me, and not the good kind of attention. And so it's really cool, that first episode. Like I said, it's a longer episode. It's about 45 minutes, versus the other ones are around 30 minutes. It really does set the show up for success, and it makes you want to watch more. I really appreciated the way that they put this show together, and Daniel Wu really, like I said, as a Monkey King, did a great job. As you guys know, I may or may not know, he's been very active in activism for stopping Asian hate and things like that, and those different causes. And he actually didn't really talk a lot about that in this show. Who did talk a lot about that indirectly was one of my personal heroes, Kehu Kwan. This guy, I love this guy so much. Honestly, I seriously, one day I want to meet him. I really would just love to meet him. I've been following that guy since I first saw him as a kid in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Short Round was one of my favorite characters growing up, and then Data in Goonies, obviously. And it's one of those things. Growing up as an Indian kid in PG County here, you don't see a lot of Indian kids in cinema growing up, right? And he talks about this, and he has a really, really amazing monologue in, I think it's episode 7 or episode 8. I think it's episode 7. And that's actually what got me to watch the show, honestly. Before I saw that monologue, the show was like, okay, well, we'll see. I'll get to it eventually. But when I watched that monologue, he talks about a lot of things, frankly. He talks about his experience. And I'm not sure if that was ad-libbed or not, because it mirrors his real life experience. And I think that's also why it hit me in the feels, because it really is how he felt in that moment. He's talked about that in interviews in the past, about how he felt invisible, how he felt like, after his breakout roles in Goonies and Indiana Jones, the roles just didn't come in anymore, right? He kept being asked to be a nerd or a neighbor or some insignificant character. And then he does this monologue where he talks about, he hopes that there's some kid out there watching this and realizing that they don't have to be a punchline. And I'll be honest, I teared up when I heard that, because that's all that Asian characters had been growing up, right? Nerds, punchlines, neighbors, the goofy person, maybe the ninja once in a while, right? The martial artist. But that wasn't Indians. That was always East Asians, right? Indians, South Asians, Pakistanis, we were always the convenience store owners, the gas station owners, the all every single one of them had an accent. You know, there were the most prominent examples, obviously Apu, easiest one. Um, but second is actually Ben Javeri. I don't know if anyone knows that guy, but he's not actually a real person. Obviously, that's the name of the character in Short Circuit, and that was Short Circuit 1 and 2. And that was an older movie in the 80s. Dating myself a little bit, but obviously, is what it is. That guy wasn't even played by an actual Indian guy. He was played by a white guy. And I didn't know that until maybe like 10 years later. I mean, again, I'm watching this as a kid, right? But he had an accent and he was playing this guy. And I was like, oh, he's an Indian guy. I saw an Indian guy in a movie. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Super, super cool. I remember thinking that myself. And then it didn't even occur to me that this guy was a nerd and whatever. It was just, that's how Indian people are. That's how we're supposed to be. Our place in society is being the smart, nerdy person who gets tied up and thrown in a freezer, right? That happens in part 2, by the way, in case you're wondering. um, it's just that was our place in society as far as I was concerned, and that was reinforced every single day when I went to school because I was a nerd, right? My dad, I told you, my parents were very much of the mindset of just keep your head down and do the work, keep doing the work, keep doing the work. Don't worry about the kids bullying you, starting fights with you, throwing your books on the floor or like tearing up your homework or calling you names and whatever and picking on you. Don't worry about that. Don't get into fights. Obviously, I did not listen to any of that and got into a lot of fights in elementary school, but that was the advice I was getting. I didn't get any real good advice about it. And then teachers obviously thought I was the problem because I was the one getting picked on all the time. But in different scenarios, I would be the common denominator, right? So I wasn't getting any help from anyone. So my thought was, I'm also the only Indian kid in class until another Indian kid comes in and they're like, oh, you guys should be friends. We actually ended up hating each other to start, right? But we ended up becoming friends later on. But it's just one of those things where until you see yourself represented somewhere else, and I know this may sound, trite to some people, or may sound like you're just parroting stuff out, but it's really true. Until you see yourself represented, you ask someone who their heroes are, and who do you look up to? Who do you want to be when you grow up? And you're going to look at what you see out there. You're going to look at where the possibilities are, right? I never saw myself as a president of the United States or that kind of stuff. Or I definitely didn't see myself as an NBA player or NFL, right? When I was a kid, I wanted to be an archaeologist, paleontologist, sorry, and then archaeologist later, but kind of both. But that's because I love dinosaurs. But then when I really thought about it and of what I wanted to do, I didn't have any heroes to look up to growing up as Indian people, right? That guy that I thought was actually really cool. Again, I was a nerd, so I thought that being a nerd was cool. Ben Javeri was a white guy in a movie playing an Indian guy with brown face and everything, darkened his hair, all that stuff. He was a robotics guy, super super cool. I would love to design robots, right? But then I realized he wasn't really Indian, and I was like, well, what does that even mean now, right? And then Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. A lot of Indian people in that movie. None of them were cool. You got Amrish Puri, who was a Hindi actor, famous guy, playing essentially like a voodoo priest, right? That's also, that kills people and sacrifices them to Kali, who actually is a Hindu goddess, but not that extreme and crazy. Those are our options growing up. And then Apu, convenience store owner. My parents weren't business owners. They didn't start a business. They didn't have a convenience store or a gas station, any of that stuff. They worked full time for other people, right? And they dealt with a crap ton of discrimination, and not the subtle stuff that we're seeing in this show or in reality nowadays. I'm talking directly. People were telling them, actively saying to them, you foreigners always want something handed to you. You're not going to get this job because you're a foreigner. And we're giving to that person over there because they're American. They deserve it. You came from your country to take our jobs. These are actual statements that were made to my parents directly, not in private rooms that they overheard. This is like, I'm talking to you directly. I'm telling you, you're taking our jobs. I'm not going to let it happen. Even though you deserve the promotion, you're not getting it. Tough. Deal with it. And what my parents do, kept their heads down and did their work. Just like Chin Han, Jin's father in the show. So it really hits home. But back to Ke Kwan, he played the story with him is in the show. He plays an actor who played this character in the 80s, this like comic relief character on a TV show back in the 80s, and he didn't get a whole lot of work after that. And so it's kind of like almost like a parallel. It is a parallel for his real life, where he didn't get a character, he didn't get any acting gigs after that, right? He kept getting typecast as nerds or neighbors or ninjas or whatever the situation might be. And they do like a reunion show, and they interview him and ask his questions, and he really just nails it with that monologue. But it's such a powerful statement that unless you take a second to actually listen to it and understand it, it can very easily go over people's heads. And this is not people crying wolf. It's not people, finding stuff where it isn't there. In the show, Jin actually does the opposite. There are activists in his school, like students who are like really like active and like, hey, let's just get justice for the situations that happen. And there are a lot of situations that happen in the show, that are pretty messed up to Jin. But he's just wants to be a regular kid, and his way of dealing with it is sweeping under the rug. It's like, oh no, everything's fine, right? And again, the kids in the show. There's no like evil kid on the show, which I also appreciate it, because it's very rare that there are kids out there who are just like evil, right? There are kids out there who just they're being dicks not because they want to be dicks, but they're being dicks because they think it's fun or funny or whatever, and they think it can advance their social status, right? If they make fun of another kid, then that puts them above that kid. I'm not saying it's right, but it's the way people reason, right? Social status and whatnot. And so that's what happens in the show. And Jin's response is, let's minimize. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to do anything crazy. I just want to just be a kid and play soccer and be successful and be happy. And that hits home. It really does for a lot of people. So if you haven't watched the show yet, I would highly, highly recommend you check it out. I hope this review was helpful for you guys. And like I said, there's a lot of amazing themes in the show that are really well tackled. But one of them is definitely that as theater, as entertainment evolves, we have to hold companies and industries and studios accountable, because at the end of the day, portrayal matters, right? And I'm not saying there's not going to be a nerdy kid, Indian kid, or nerdy Asian kid out there. What I am saying though is that there's got to be more than that, right? Another quick line from that show is when Ke Kwan's talking about his experience, he talks about wanting to be the hero. And the interviewer is like, oh, Batman didn't call. And it's kind of a dick response, right? But then Ke Kwan, without missing a beat, responds really, really beautifully. And he's like, not a superhero. I just want to be the guy who has a journey. I want to be the guy who stands up for what he believes in. That's a hero too. And that's real. It's very, very real. And if you think about it from that perspective, you think about it from that point of view, where these Asian characters, and they're not saying, Asian, South Asian, whatever marginalized demographics that are out there, they're not asking to be a superhero or to race swap or gender swap a superhero or a beloved character. That's an easy cop-out win, right? Frankly, it's just divisive and it's stupid and it makes no sense, to be honest with you. We're just asking to have a character arc, to make sense, to stand up for what we believe in, to be not a pushover character, to not just be comic relief, right? I think that can be very, very powerful. So with that, I will end today, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button, hit the comment, let me know what you think, and tune in next week. We'll have an interview and we'll talk more about leadership, business, marketing, all those things and more. Thank you guys for tuning in. Take care. Stay safe. This has been Ikigai Podcast. Sorry. Messed that up at the end. Almost had it. This has been the Ikigai Leadership Podcast. Thank you guys so much. Take care. Stay safe.